Alright guys, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video. So on Global we finally have the super attack counter update. So that means a lot of super attack counter units have indeed received a massive buff. Now if you don't know what this means, or you weren't around when the update was taking place on JP, basically what's happened is that units that have super attack counters that were also under the umbrella of dodge have now been changed in their passive. So I'll give a few examples, like the ones we brought on our team, which is the LRSSJ4 Year 7s, Easy LRSSJ4 Goku and Vegeta, and Easy Tech Gogeta as well. Instead of their counters coming under the dodge kind of umbrella, the dodge category, they are now been changed to nullify enemy super and then counter with tremendous power, which I think is a great change. It's an update I actually was really looking forward to. I think it's a great change to make. It does make these units, even if only a little bit, it does make them a bit more viable. It makes them definitely more consistent, and it definitely brings some of these units, depending on how your box is looking, back into contention for running in, you know, difficult content such as Red Zone, and the main one being Red Zone Broly. So I'm all here for this change. The only qualm I have with it is, well, one, and you would have heard from yesterday's video with the box showcase, that for some reason it didn't want to pop for me yesterday, and it took me 4 attempts. It took me 4 runs in Red Zone Broly to finally get 1 of 3, and then I put Vegeta on the team to increase my odds, 1 of 4 units, 1 of 4 to actually get their super attack counter off. It took me 4 attempts to do that with 3 and then 4 units on the team. So in the end, that's why it ended up becoming a pre-recorded video, but I wanted to talk about the update nonetheless, and I also wanted to gauge your guys' opinions. What do you think of this update? Do you like it? Do you not? Do you think it makes that much of a change? It doesn't make too big of one in my opinion, but it does make a change, and I really do like this update. But as I said, my only qualm, aside from that, which is not necessarily the update's fault, it's just kind of bad luck, is I wish this change came so much sooner. So much sooner. Because, you know, if this update came maybe just before or as we were going into the 7th anniversary, when the LRSSJ4s became a thing, when the Easy A's came out for the LRSSJ4 Goku, Vegeta and Gogeta, they would have thrived. They would have been some of the, I mean, they already were some of the best Easy A's and best units in the game for months and months, don't get me wrong. But again, it would have given them more consistency. It would have made them age a whole lot better if when Red Zone dropped during the 7th anniversary and Broly came out, because this is the main guy that this is applicable for, and then any future Red Zone or even just harder content enemies they make that disable dodge, they are now kind of up there in contention for some of the best units to use or better units to use. But if they'd done it going into the 7th anniversary or just before, then when Red Zone Broly dropped, and it was so difficult to do, you know, you were literally bringing some of these units, you know, you were definitely bringing the LRSSJ4s if you had them. The same could be said for Goku, maybe not Jeets, just because he does have type disadvantage at the end, but Gogeta was there as well because he had type advantage. You were bringing these units anyway. But the reason why they kind of, you know, fell out of grace with how good they are, you know, in terms of, you know, if you're going to bring them, especially now when you got the likes of Birdku, Easy A Gohan, you know, there are so many more options you will take over them. I'm not saying they displace any of them, but they are now back in the conversation. It does give them more, as I said, viability and consistency in events like this. But if the update came out then, they would have had such a better time aging as units, just because, could you imagine you get to the final phase against Broly, right? You have transformed your LRSSJ4s, the Year 7s, you transform them to Gogeta. And now, you know, Broly cancels dodge for the entire event. Okay? The Blues have a slightly better time because they have a slot 1 unit in Easy A, you know, Easy A Tech Godku. And not to mention they have type advantage against Broly. And that's just his final phase, but still, for the most part, they're a little bit more safer. They have a little bit more protection. Gogeta doesn't have that. So wherever you got his stacking up to, however many Rainbow Spears you can get to give him, you know, as much damage reduction as possible, which is only going to make so much of a difference, his counter won't pop because it's considered a dodge. Could you imagine if when Red Zone first dropped, Red Zone Broly first came out, if he was able to nullify Broly's super and counter? it would have made so much more of an impact and would have helped some of these units age a whole lot better. And it's a shame they brought it out so late, because right now, it's not that it doesn't matter anymore. I still think the update is good. I think it's a great change, especially for any future content. You know, when it actually comes to making content, there's one of the counters that took me so long to get. But when it comes to making content, you know, you still put some of the better units up in the game, new easy A's up against Broly, so it still matters. But it would have meant and made a whole, like, it would have made such a bigger impact if it came out then, or even a few months after, when Red Zone was still a relatively new thing and it was kind of like the big thing to test out everyone against, and it still had that hype. As I said, that's my only qualm, is if they just done this so much earlier, it would have made a huge difference. It would have helped some of these units age, you know, a whole lot better. I'm not saying the LRSSJ4s are bad now, because they are not. Like, the slander they get, I really don't agree with. But, you know, it would have made so much more of an impact. But at least it's here now than never. Do you know what I mean? Better late than never. And I really do like the change, because as I said, it kind of adds to team building, because you now consider actually bringing these units, because they are still pretty good. Don't get me wrong, they have aged naturally, because on global anyway, they're almost a year old. On JP, they're just over a year old at this point. And that's only to name a few. You know, there's some other ones in there as well, like the Exchange Goku Gohan unit. There's also Gamma 1, but he's already still like so good as it is already. But still, they come back into contention for team builds if you're going to bring them or not, because they have that bit more consistency. Like, who doesn't want to dodge a whole super attack or nullify a whole super attack and then counterattack it, especially if you hit a crit counter. Like, for example, Gogeta has type advantage here. Yes, his easy is obviously age, but type advantage, he's an older unit, he's going to have dupes. Once he's built up and he's super attacked and he gets the attack and defense raise, he can actually do some good damage. And again, especially with dupes. And now you give him, or he's able to nullify and counter, he's actually really good with all of those factors considered, being in against Broly's final phase. Like, obviously you can utilize the counter for the entire event, but especially in the final phase, he's actually amazing for it now. I said it adds a bit extra for team building. These units are back into contention, even with some of the units being there. You know, you're still probably going to pick some of them over them, but, you know, especially for some people who don't have some of the newer units that go on these teams where you could actually now use, mainly when I talk about this, because they do go on a lot of the better teams in the game, like the LRSSJ4s, for example. And as I said, it makes them more viable, increases their lifespan as a unit, even though they are aging. And yeah, as I said, it just makes them more consistent in events, and especially where something like Dodge is disabled, where I know he still performs exceptionally well in this event, like Easy A Gogeta Blue. You know, maybe at one point you run out of items, he gets hit with a super, you know, he might take a lot of damage, and depending on your health's at, you might die. You know, so even though he's good there, that's not the best example to use, but you know what I mean, like. And if Dokkan does any future content, future events, or any future Red Zone stages where the enemy disables Dodge, these units are up there to be viable again, or to use again, and, you know, consider taking them. Does it make them, like, crazy OP? Are they now back to being, like, in the top 10 again? No, definitely not. But it does, as I said, it does increase their lifespan, so I'm all here for it. Because, as I said, I don't agree with the LRSSJ4 slander. Like, they are literally identical to the gods, aside from the fact that when you fuse them into Gogeta and the blues transform, Gogeta has damage reduction per rainbow keys whereas the gods, of course, have dodge chance. And then the only other thing that makes the gods better is their leader skill, because it's so broad. And not to mention, Movie Heroes has been receiving a whole lot of love for the last year as well. So their leader skill is stayed winning. They've got constant buffs, whereas Fuse Fighters, hardly any. Aside from like a few Easy A's maybe. And then GT Heroes has barely been touched. There has been no new Super Saiyan 4 units since Heroes, and they didn't really cohese well with the LRSSJ4s and pre-existing Super Saiyan 4 units. So aside from the leader skill, they are pretty much identical down to the very T in terms of what they do. The only difference is in why the gods age so much better, and this is why they say the SSJ4s are nowhere near as good as them, is literally not long after they dropped and we got the Easy A's for the 7-year anniversary, we got one of the best Easy A's, especially for Red Zone Broly as well at the time. We got an Easy A and Easy A Tech God Goku, which gave them a slot 1 unit and it gave them a whole lot of protection, where the SSJ4s don't have one. And as I said, not to mention their leader skill has been given a whole lot of love over the last year, where the SSJ4s haven't. So I really do think the slander's unfair. That said, I am a big fan of this new update. I just wish they implemented it sooner. But as I said, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. What do you think of this new update? Do you like it? I mean, I can't imagine you don't, but do let me your thoughts down in the comments. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video, guys. And Peace.